All right, it's 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Preparing for Success, Challenges and Opportunities for Young Professionals Post-COVID-19. It's a webinar sponsored by the American Floral Endowment's Young Professional Council. My name is Megan Bowan. I am Director of Research Operations for the Ball Helix Research and Development Team at Ball Horticultural Company in West Chicago. I also sit on the board of trustees for the American Floral Endowment and serve as the liaison to the Young Professionals Council, or YPC. Established in 2015, the YPC offers leadership, professional development, and networking opportunities for young floral industry professors. Professionals. YPC members participate in online and in-person meetings, webinars, and other networking opportunities to share ideas, collaborate with influential industry members, and help promote careers in the floral industry to support the AFE's mission. We encourage you to take a look and join us at the endowment.org/YPC. And I believe Karen just put the link in the chat. This interactive discussion is being recorded and will be available on the endowment site and YouTube. We encourage you to submit your questions through the Q&A feature on the chat, and we'll answer as many of your questions live as we can before the end of the hour. So without further ado, I'd like to have our expert panelists introduce themselves and share a bit about their work. Unfortunately, Pat Dawson could not join us today, but I'd like to start with Art Van Wingerden from Metrolina Greenhouses. Thanks for joining, Art.
Hey, thank you. So pleasure to be on this panel and help some young professionals learn about our industry and learn about how great it is. So Art Van Wingerden, Metrolina Greenhouse, we're a family-owned company, been in business for 49 years. So next year, obviously, will be our 50th year in business. We're a second-generation company. We service major retailers and big box stores and home improvement chains. So Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart are our customers. We have between our two locations about 15 million square feet of growing area. So it's a rather large area to keep up with, about 400 acres of growing space. We employ about 1,000 people year round, and then we go up about another 600-700 during the midst of spring, just between those two companies. We also do a ton of merchandising at all the stores. So at our peak, we'll have right at 5,000 people working in our industry just through Metrolina Greenhouses. So thankful to be on this panel and looking forward to all the questions that you guys have, and hopefully we can give you answers that'll help you in your pursuit of this industry.
Thanks, Art. And Krystal Snyder from Penn State University. Thanks, Krystal, for joining.
Yep, thank you. So I am Krystal Snyder. I am actually an extension educator. That's what Penn State calls extension agents. And I focus on commercial horticulture. So I do a lot of work with our local greenhouse growers, actually all over the state of Pennsylvania, but I am based in the northeast section of Pennsylvania. Do a lot of work with our trial gardens that are based in Landisville. So that's where all of the breeding companies like Ball send us hundreds of plants every year. I think we just planted about 1,000 entries for this year. So that's a really fun part of my job, where I get to go and hang out at the trial gardens and, analyze all these plants and see how they do in our climate, and then, give that back to growers, and they say, hey, I really want to plant these plants because they do so well at the trials. And I spent 8 years in industry, and before I came to extension, and I was a technical specialist for a fertilizer company. And I did mostly floriculture and hydroponics for growers all over the country. And I was in the very first group of YPC, and that makes me feel really old because that was a long time ago now. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. We're excited to have you. And I want to make sure everyone on the attendees list knows this is really meant to be an interactive discussion. So any questions, please put them in the box. We'll make sure they get answered. And anything that you have, any follow-up questions after the webinar as well, please reach out and we'd be happy to help. So let's launch into some of our questions that we have for our two panelists today. So let's start off with talking about just the job application process in general. How, from your perspective, do you think industry and academia applications differ? And how can someone who's a young professional best present themselves on both, knowing that they are different?
Yeah, I'd say on the industry side of it, obviously I don't know the academia part, so I'll let Krystal answer that part for sure. But just on the industry side, it's just having, what did you do in school? What were you in different clubs? What kind of jobs did you have? Did you have anything to do with that, with our industry ahead of time? And we don't always have to have industry experience for people to come work for us. If they have an interest in plants, we are more than happy to have them come to Metrolina and learn. Two of our main head growers, our chief horticulture officer came to us through exchange student programs. So he came through Bulgaria, worked here for a year at that, then went back to Bulgaria, came back here, has been here 21 years and has risen all the way through our ranks to become chief of horticulture. Our head plug grower was from Colombia as an exchange student. Then we got tons of other used to be students that now work for us that either came through our intern program, because we try to have 2 to 5 interns during the summer, growing interns, just to look at how to, what does it take to grow or to be a grower at a large greenhouse operation. Gives some students some excellent education and some work experience that they might not get elsewhere. And it might go, okay, yeah, I do want to work in a greenhouse, or yeah, that's not for me. So let me go try something else and see if that's what I want to do. We hire somebody, if we hire a grower, it's usually 2 years before we figure out really, do they got it or they not have it. And with interns, we have a 10-week program that we can do. So we've gotten with 5 or 6 colleges around here between Clemson, NC State, and others that send students here, that several of them have become growers with us. So it's a great way for us to look at it and see, do people want to do that? On your application, just put what you've done, your education, your work experience is a big deal. And then obviously be very attentive when you go to your interview. I always tell my kids, when you go to an interview, throw your phone in your car. Don't even look at it, because otherwise it's too tempting to look. All right.
Awesome. Krystal?
So on the academia side, actually, I was just on a hiring committee. So I looked at a whole lot of resumes coming in. And I will say the biggest thing is to make sure that if you have any external publications, or you have trade publications, things like that, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for speaking opportunities. Maybe if you were as a leader in a club or a group, maybe in your undergraduate or, your master's program, I will say I have seen less emphasis on the PhD right now. I've seen a lot of positions for, maybe lecturers or extension professionals and things like that, that are like masters with some experience in the industry and things like that. And I think that that's breaking down some barriers as well, but really having some street cred and some experience out there in the industry, I think, not the industry, but industry events, I think that really goes a long way, to see like what those publications are. That's the 2 biggest differences that I've seen, going from industry to academia and, looking at other things.
Thanks. I want to just a quick follow-up question to that, that I know I have experience with interacting with various young professionals in the industry, is how much weight do you place on their educational background, maybe their major professor? I know, Krystal, you just talked about the PhD versus a master's. How much does that really tie into a decision process in a really competitive job market right now?
That's a great question. I think it's not as much as it used to be. That educational pedigree does make a big difference, but I don't think it's as high as it was, maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago. It's still important to say, this is who I worked with, this is what I've done, these are the contacts I have, but, I want to see what you've done as a student, more so of what your advisor has done.
Sure. Awesome. We did get a question. I want to make sure that we have that answered. So Alexandria asked, I am a supply chain management major with a love for horticulture. How can I be appealing to the business side of the plant industry if I'm not a science major? That's a really great question. There's a whole other aspect of floriculture that isn't necessarily the science of the plants.
Yeah, and I'd say on our side, we not only need supply chain people, we need engineers. Obviously, I need IT help because I can't even figure out how to do a Zoom call. Thankfully, somebody helped me with that. So there are so many different things that are in a greenhouse. Many people think, well, if I don't grow plants, and I can't be in a greenhouse. I will personally tell you, I didn't get educated as a grower. I actually didn't even go to college. So, but I like operations, and we have operations people here. How do you make sure labor happens? My youngest brother is very good at automation. He can look at automation, figure it out real quick. I got another brother that's really good at logistics, and I got a bevy of people that work for us that aren't in the greenhouse or didn't come up through the greenhouse industry, but they found it to be an industry that they enjoyed doing. They like the ups and downs of our industry, and what I mean by that is that it's the busyness of our industry and then the little bit slower times in our industry. We're not always wide open all year long. We're way more wide open than we used to be, but it definitely, I tell anybody, it doesn't matter what education you have, what you're into, we can use you in the greenhouse industry. So don't just look at it and go, well, if I don't have a growing or a horticulture degree, I can't be in the greenhouse industry. That is the furthest thing from the truth.
Absolutely. Krystal, anything from your experience about people coming from a really diverse background that may not necessarily be plants?
Oh, I've seen that happen. And honestly, like in my own personal experience, I left industry for a while. I got out of college. I actually worked for an orchard, and then I left to be a substitute teacher. And I taught high school biology for 5 years, because it was a very strange time in life. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do this for a little while. But I think that, exactly what Art said, just because we need all those people. Actually, I think I just saw like 2 supply chain jobs recently posted on Emergence. So, I mean, I think that that's definitely something that people are looking for.
Awesome. Kind of to bounce off of that question, you had just mentioned a job board, I think, or a networking tool. Is there better times of year and tools that you would recommend young professionals use to find these sorts of jobs in the floriculture industry, beyond just the, science organizations and things like that you see them on?
Yeah, and I'd look at that and just say, if you're a professional, any time of year is a good time to go look for a job. There is not, well, right after I graduate, so I need to look for one in June. We are always looking for good people. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. We will hire anybody that has the skill set that we're looking for, or we're always looking for good people. So I would say there's not one specific time of year that's good. Any time of year is good.
And I'll also say too, if you're really close to finishing school, whether it's your bachelor's or your master's or your PhD, and maybe you're going to be done in December, but you see a job that you are like, I really want to apply for it, because we'll wait. I know at Penn State, we will wait for the right person. And I'm sure that that's the same at other places too. So, throw your hat into the ring. And I think that's really important. I will also say I graduated from my undergrad in 2005, and the amount of jobs I see now posted, oh my goodness, there are so many opportunities, and they are so easily found and in your face. Like, it's not like it was, 10 years ago and things like that. So I think that's a big difference too. It's a lot easier to find those opportunities.
Yeah, and just to plug the AFE has a new job board that we launched about a year ago, I believe, that has a really diverse group of job postings. So I would encourage people to look at that. But also the same coming from my area of industry, always looking for great people. And if you're a great fit for the team, then waiting is not necessarily an issue.
Yeah, Megan, I'll go on one other thing on that. I serve as well on the AFE board, and we have gotten 2 or 3 interns from AFE as well. So it's not, they have an internship program, or we have an internship program where we can place you all around the country with different businesses. And it's not just horticulture. It's not just a greenhouse. You could go work in flower shops or whatever piques your interest. I'm sure we can line you up with something that you like. So if you're still in school and you're looking for something, tell AFE, we can get you somewhere you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We have internships in retail. One thing that I'm always fascinated with coming as also in kind of a newbie to the floriculture industry is the marketing and the creativity and all of that that goes into the floriculture industry. We have internships that focus on that as well. So there's just a huge wide range of opportunities there. Let's see, anything on those topics before we move on to the next question? Let's see, we're getting a lot of really good, let's see. So what's the best way from both of your perspectives to do that networking, to find opportunities? We talked about internships and we've talked about, kind of getting placements, but is there any other way that you have engaged with young professionals that you have found to be great hires for your teams?
Yeah, well, obviously we work through a lot of colleges, so that is one way that we definitely get into stuff like that. But I think it's getting to know people in the industry as well. So you can go online and find industry help and just get involved with those people. Whether I don't know what Ball has, but there are big names out there that have plenty of opportunities to get into stuff. And hey, don't be shy. Call somebody up. Call a greenhouse up. We'll let anybody about come through our place and look at what we're doing. And that just gives you another contact that you have. And we know tons of other greenhouses. We have 58 partner growers that grow for us. And they're from Michigan to Oregon to Florida. So yeah, if you don't want to work for a big greenhouse, I got plenty of other smaller greenhouses that are more than happy to be looking for somebody that wants to get into the business, but maybe on a smaller scale.
Awesome.
And I'll also say going to industry events makes a world of difference as well. Like, and I mean, Cultivate is crazy and overwhelming and things like that. But even some smaller ones, depending on where you're located, if you have a small regional horticultural meeting or something like that, try to get involved in that. And, NFF, which is National Floriculture Forum, which is wonderfully funded in part by AFE, I've met some of my closest friends at NFF over the years, and I've got to go to amazing places too. So, I mean, I think that that's something that you should really kind of keep on your radar. And I'll also say I'm like the most introverted extrovert. Like I can be extroverted when I need to be, but I really am like a very shy person. So that's something you got to kind of come out of your shell, and it's okay to have a wingman too. Like if you have a really good friend who's also, trying to find people and make those network connections, go it as a team makes a big difference too.
And I would actually say that as well. I actually agree, because I'm actually a severe introvert, or I was a long time ago, and nobody believes that anymore. But you have to put yourself out there. Industry events, that is a great idea. That is a place where you can meet a ton of people and really make your network really big. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that, being in a conference space or conference room and not knowing anyone, but feeling that you should at least go talk to someone. And it's, it can be really intimidating, but I find that our industry is so open and people are so welcome. They love what they do and they want to share it and they want to talk about it. And, people have no problem sharing their love for flowers. So even if you are not necessarily in our industry right now, there are opportunities to meet people as long as you take the initiative, it sounds like, to participate in things like industry events. Okay, so next question, shifting gears entirely. So what is the demand for research related jobs in the floriculture industry? And I suppose I can also chime in on this one given my role in Ball, but Krystal and Art.
I think there's a huge demand for research as, things are really changing in the industry. We've seen new soil mixes come out. We've seen new varieties come out that have different, growing habits. We've seen even just the shift from hydroponic growing into warehouse farming and things like that. And all of those things need lots of research, and, it's definitely there. And I think companies are investing more, like industry partner companies are investing more into their research and development as well.
Mm-hmm.
Our research department just at Metrolina is 11 people. So we research everything that we do. We look at it and what are we going to do with it? Different plants. Yeah, I agree with Krystal that, there's so many new plants, so many new things. But if you just look at, she touched on it a little bit, just vegetables, the amount of tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers that are grown in greenhouses now is staggering compared to 10 years ago. And that's only going to continue to increase. That's not going to decrease. More and more people, or more and more retailers are looking for produce that's close to them. And a tomato in a greenhouse, a cucumber in a greenhouse, and a pepper in a greenhouse, you can grow them for 9 to 12 months. In a field, you're lucky to get 3 months out of it. So it's just the amount of produce in such a small area is amazing what can be done. So it's not, again, it's not just floriculture. Floriculture encompasses so many different things. Yeah, even cannabis and hemp and all kinds of different things that we probably wouldn't even think we would have talked about 10 years ago.
Yeah, the research aspects to floriculture, horticulture, I mean, there are so many opportunities now coming from, I'm a molecular and computational biologist. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about things like DNA and genomes and stuff like that, that there were just no tools in the crops that we think about daily, like, you know, the flowers and things like that, that now exist, or at least the barrier to getting those resources are so much lower now that the opportunities to do really exciting and innovative research that can create, you know, new products that, you know, will be incredible for the industry and, you know, new and exciting things for customers. It's just starting, you know, we're just starting to see now the opportunities that are coming into that space. So it sounds like, regardless of what your maybe your research and scientific passion is, there's opportunities right now in the floriculture industry. Let's see. Related to that, someone asked, Brittany has asked, is horticulture or botany a better degree for an R&D related career path?
You know
Yeah,
what?
I'm gonna let Krystal have this one.
I think they all are this, they are not the same, but I will say that everybody is looking at this whole kind of umbrella of plant sciences now. And I think that, you know, if you come in with a horticulture degree or a botany degree or an agronomy degree or whatever it is, as long as you're in that plant sciences umbrella, I think that you're okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it probably, I mean, it's really what you're passionate about, and then what do you actually want to be focused in your next step beyond that degree, right? So I've always, botany is very focused on systematics and relationships of plants and ecosystems, and a lot of, you know, that sort of larger scale research. But there's spaces for that in our industry, as in, of course, we've just talked through some of the opportunities in horticulture. So at least from my perspective in the industry for R&D, it's not so much really what the title of your degree is, it's what you've studied and what you've taken from that degree that you bring to the team that you're looking to join as a scientist. What is that core skill set, regardless of what the degree title is. So, okay. Oh, biochemists represent. All right, so moving on. Let's see. What are some common resume don'ts that you've seen in the past for both industry and academic applications that you could give some insight to for our young professionals?
yeah. For me, what I look at, if somebody's job hopping every 6 months, yeah, I can handle 1 or 2 that people do that. But if you have a 5 to 7 year run and you've had like 6 or 7 jobs, you better be able to explain really well why you had to jump from job to job and you didn't just stick it out for 2 years and see if you really, really like it. My kids are 22 to 28, and I tell them, hey, if you go work somewhere, you need to stay 2 years to make sure you're really getting out of it what you think. Sometimes you get into something for 3 months and you think it's horrible, and you know I gotta do something else. Yeah, I can handle 1 of those on a resume, but multiple ones of those, that's gonna be a little tough. So most people don't put on their college thing that it takes them. If it takes you 6 years to get a 4-year degree, then yeah, that's probably going to be a little red flag for me as well. But it's not going to keep me from hiring somebody. Sometimes it does take people a while to get through.
I would say that's probably the biggest one that I've seen too. And, you know, just trying to be able to explain that and explain, you know, why you've decided to, you know, look for other opportunities and things like that.
Sure. So at least, even if that's the case, because everyone has circumstances, right, that come up and life happens, but as long as you can coherently discuss the reasons why.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Next question. What do you think from current academic programs is missing in both undergraduate and graduate that either you wish you had had or you don't see, that you have a lot of candidates coming in that you kind of see holes that need to be filled, that you can steer our young professionals towards either getting supplementary experience and background, or if you had the ability to talk to curriculum leads at all of these colleges, what would you tell them?
For us on the larger scale horticulture part of it, academia, they tend to take one plant and then you grow that one plant, and then you try 7 different ways on that one plant. And we do a little bit of that with R&D, but even then we'll grow 100 of this, 200 of that. To me, if you're in that, get an internship somewhere during either between your sophomore and junior year, or between your junior and senior year, because that helps you figure out what you really like to do anyway. You might go to a large place and go, oh yeah, I can handle this. There's a big enough umbrella here where I'm not going to get swallowed up. Or I might want to go to a smaller place where I might have to put a little more time in, but my responsibilities might not be as large. A lot of our chemical training and stuff, just because chemicals change so much, that what you learn in school, we're going to reteach you when you get here anyway. So yeah, if we can't put neonics on things or whatever it may be, that was a big change. No matter what your opinion is on it, it definitely made a change in our industry. And that's something that we had to relearn. So, my advice to anybody that's still in school, find a good internship between your sophomore, junior year, or your junior and senior year at a greenhouse or in a interest that you're in. It might not be in the greenhouse. Even if you're in supply chain, go find a supply chain job. If you're R&D, find an R&D internship. They're out there.
Yeah. And I'll say too, I think too, I was an adjunct, so I taught greenhouse management and hydroponics, and 2 big things that I focused on. A lot of my students went out into industry right away, like as growers and things like that. And I think 2 big things that I really tried to hit home for them was like just common pesticide safety, I think is a big one that is kind of overlooked at this point, but it needs to be addressed. And the other thing is, and this is coming from my fertilizer background, but plant nutrition. Like, I think that that's a huge thing that, plant nutrition and plant diseases that we need to focus on a little bit better, for people who are going out into growing.
How about some of those skills? And I'm not going to use the phrase soft skills because I don't, don't think that's necessarily the case. But some of those skills that, coming into a team, obviously it's really hard to get that kind of experience. I think internships probably help with getting kind of an understanding of a company's culture and whatnot. But are there things that young professionals can be doing to be better prepared to be in an industry or academic team environment and working in that kind of professional space that might be missing right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you come into our place, we're gonna put you through a 6-month basically orientation of, hey, this is what we expect out of the job, and somebody's going to be with you side by side. The biggest thing on that is willingness to learn. So if you learn way more through failure than you do success, but we don't want you to fail and fall on your face every day either. We want you to be successful, because obviously if you're not successful, then the company's not successful. And, obviously the company needs to be successful for you to keep your job. So it's just learning. Have an attitude and an open mind of, I want to learn and then be better at my job than I was yesterday.
And also, organizations like YPC, I think, go a long way in teaching you to work on projects with different co-collaborators that you might not work with or see every day, and then, try to get that to the finish line. And that's a big one too, being able to work with the way different people like to work as well.
Yeah, adjusting to, especially if you've done a lot of schooling and you're very set in your ways of how you like to have things done, you will be expected to modify that to meet the needs of the team and how it operates. You have to be flexible in order to be able to do that. Yeah. Thank you both. Yeah, same thing from the kind of the more basic R&D side of things, that there's just a lot that goes into being as part of a team, and everyone has something to contribute. And yes, your educational background and whatever degrees you hold are important for the skill sets that you bring. But when you come to an industry position, you join a company, you're joining that organization, and we really, speaking from the Bell perspective, want you to be part of our team and to, operate in that similar type of way. So that can be a hard adjustment depending on, how set you are in your ways and how inflexible you may be. So yeah, being open to learn and staying flexible to be able to adjust is important. Mary asked, speaking to a job description posted on a job board, to what degree do you need to meet all the stated criteria? Would you actually be considered for a position if you met the criteria but didn't have the degree, or had too high of a degree for a job, or only had experience doing partial job expectation tasks?
Yeah, for us, you don't have to you don't have to check every box. We put the boxes out there so you know kind of what we expect. But yeah, if you have 80% of the boxes checked, you're not going to have an issue getting a job here. So you don't have to have every single box checked in our job description. We just like to put a very detailed job description out so people know what to expect of the job. If we don't put on a job description, weekend work is required every third or fourth weekend, then somebody gets here and they go, I got to work Saturday and Sunday every third weekend. Well, yeah, you get a day off during the week for that, but that is part of the job. These plants, they don't know that it's Saturday or Sunday. They don't know that people are on vacation. They don't understand that at all. They just grow. That's what they do. And somebody's got to be here to take care of it. So much more of our job description is not a warning, but it's really just hey, here's what we expect. So it's a list of expectations that we have, but you don't have to have every one of them checked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll speak from personal experience. When I applied for my extension position, I did not have the level of degree that they were looking for, but I had known enough people in extension that I was like, do you think I should apply for this? And they were like, yes, because you have all of these other things. So, it doesn't hurt yes, it takes time to put it out there, but, I know even in this last round of hiring that we did, there was people who didn't have the experience we were looking for, but maybe they had the soft skills that we were looking for, or they did have a horticultural background and things like that. So, if it's something that interests you, throw your name out there. You never know what's going to come from it, but I don't put all of your eggs in that, well, I don't have a PhD, I can't apply for this position kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. A job description list is a wish list. At best, I think that 80% is always kind of a good, mark of, you don't want to, it wouldn't make sense to apply to something that you don't meet any of the basic criteria, right? But there's always that threshold. And I think that especially women are less likely to apply to something unless they meet and exceed every stated expectation on the job description, and degree as well, right? For some companies or positions, maybe there is a hard and fast cut off, and you'll know that hopefully pretty quickly, but the worst people can say is no. So definitely throw your hat in the ring, and also use networking as you can, like you did. Krystal, it sounds like, you knew people in the industry that could give more insight to the position, whether or not you would be considered. So kind of
and I'll also say too, sometimes if you don't have all of the qualifications, but you would be willing to work towards those, that goes a long way as well.
Sure. So can you give an example of where you've seen that, where maybe someone came in, but they had an opportunity to maybe fill in a gap?
Yeah, so actually, we have a couple extension educators who only have bachelor's degrees. So, the deal was that you could come in to extension with a bachelor's and experience, but it was, kind of agreed upon that you would get a master's within a certain amount of time. And so that's, that is a pretty good example of how they, the job description says master's degree, but they'll, kind of move it around if you have enough of the combination of both and you're willing to go and do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. next question. Adisha asks, is there demand for science communication positions in industry? I mean, that's a lot of what you do, right? Krystal, in extension, right?
Oh yeah, so like extension is taking the research that our professors are doing and our researchers are doing at main campus and kind of digesting it down to give it out to growers and other folks who are growing in the industry to, so they can kind of read it and understand it. And it's not all of this scientific methods and materials and this is what you're supposed to do, and kind of giving it to them in an easier to digest format. Yeah, so that's a lot of what I do every day, especially with new crops coming out. Like Art mentioned hemp 10 years ago, I would have never thought that I would be standing in a hemp field. And now we have lots of growers who have never grown a crop before in their lives. And they're like, I don't understand any of this. What do you mean? Like I have to put down a cover crop or I have to lay plastic. So it's a lot of that. And I definitely think that that's out there. And there's also, those opportunities with some of the industry publications who are looking for, columnists and things like that as well.
Art, anything from your perspective in terms of communicating an outward facing
just on our communication, we have a whole marketing department. So they're always communicating with our retailers on different pot styles. So, even marketing, we have people that, design specialists. We would hire somebody who, is excellent at looking at designs. That's not my gift at all. So I don't understand. I don't understand all that. I definitely see the big picture. I can't drill it down to that, to what exactly the consumer is looking for. We also have something called HGP, home garden panels. So we have 2,000 people around the country that fill out surveys for us once a month. And then we have industry people that buy into that to see what our results are and what they're looking at. I mean, it's where we found out we have 15 to 20 million new gardeners in the last year. And,
wow.
And we think 85% of them said they were going to garden again this year. So we've really increased what we do by 12 million consumers in the last year, which is, that's incredible. And I even have some friends that never planted a plant in their life, and they're 46 and 44, and they're planting stuff now, and they actually enjoy it. They're like, okay, this isn't too bad. And this is kind of a cheap hobby. This is not a real expensive hobby. So that's good, good for our industry to be growing in that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And communicating out to the customers, right, at the value of flowers, veggies, horticulture in general. And we've seen so much of that on the science aspect of it. Like you were saying, Krystal, there's so much really great technical knowledge out there that's being generated by academic labs and other people in industry, but how that gets conveyed to the consumer in a way that they can actually use it is not necessarily an easy thing to do, especially people who are very deep in the academic mindset. You've listed off the pretty standard abstract, introduction, methods and material. Well, a consumer wants to just know kind of the nugget of information that came out of that, right? So there's a huge opportunity to do more of that, I think, in our industry. Okay, so Mary asks, speaking to throw your name out there and into the hat, what happens if you do? And being a proactive person, you've applied for multiple jobs at the same time, which definitely you want to do. If more than one job application begins to move through the later stages of interview and hiring, how do you professionally navigate that scenario without burning bridges with those companies as you decide which company is the best fit for you? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. Again, you got to remember, I hate to say you're looking out for number one, because you're not, because you don't want to burn a bridge. But I think you got to find what your passion is. That word's come up several times today. Find out what job you would like the most. It's not always the one that pays the most. So don't look at a job and go, oh, well, I'm going to do that because it pays $5,000 more. That $5,000 is going to be gone in 2 months out of your mind, and you're going to be sitting in a miserable job going, I hate this job. Why did I do this? And, and I'm telling you, you got to stay at a job for 2 years, to really look decent on your resume. So now you got to do it for 2 years. So, and there's a it's like with anything else. We've all broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you gotta disappoint somebody. That's part of it. But you don't go to somebody and go, "I'm not going to take your job because it sucks." We're not going to say that. We're just going to say, "Hey, look, I definitely applied at 2 or 3 places. I found something that's more of my passion, but I want to keep the conversation open while I'm at this job." Yeah, you never know. You might have to go sell to that person. You might have to go do that. And I can tell you, if you do it professionally, talk to somebody. Don't text them. Don't text them that you're not taking a job. Talk to somebody and say, "Hey, look, I'm not taking the job," and give the real reasons. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Don't try to make it sound like something it's not. Tell them the real reasons. 99% of people are not going to hold that against you. And if you come in later, they're going to be, "Okay, yeah, well, let's see if it works here." We've had people that have worked here, gone to do something else. 2 years later, they come back and we rehire them. So, because we know what we're getting with them. So yeah, don't feel like you're going to burn a bridge. If you have 3 opportunities, you can't work at all 3. So you're going to have to pick one. But pick the one that's your passion and the one that you go, "I could see myself doing that 2 years from now."
That's awesome. Thanks, Art. Krystal?
And I agree with that 100%. You have to do what you love. And honestly, the money is something, but it's not that big of a deal. You have to look at the whole package and what does that life look like for you? And, it's very different, coming from industry and now being in academia. And I've realized that I don't want to go back to industry. It's just not where my heart is anymore. And, being on the last hiring committee that I was on, we had our pool of candidates, and we had, a couple that we really loved. And then we had one who we really, really liked a lot. And we were like, all right, well, we're going to make that person our number 3. So we had 3 full choices. And actually our first choice came back to us and said, well, I can't take this position because it really isn't enough money for what I need in my life. And we totally understand that, because sometimes extension, and even actually this industry in general, is not a big paying industry. It's just something, the facts we have to face, I think, sometimes, but we totally get it. And, I think that especially in this job market, you can't open a Grower Talks magazine without seeing, 10 people who have moved companies right now. It just seems like everybody's out and about doing different things. So.
Yeah. Just bouncing off what you've both said. I mean, it's not burning a bridge if, like you said, Art, you're doing it professionally. And maybe in a future YPC resource, we could give some examples of how one might do that and what is a good example of handling that through an email or a phone conversation, and what's the best way to say. But you always want to keep in mind, right, that you may see that person at a conference or at an industry event or that company, and you want to keep your network, broad. You want to keep a whole group of people that are all, people that you have as resources. But everyone understands it's a great position to be in if you had 3 job offers and you loved them all, right? That's a fantastic situation for you, and people get it as long as you're transparent and clear, and handle it professionally.
I think what Krystal said is right too. There are times that we've offered people jobs and they go, "Okay, that's just not enough money for me." That does not bother us either. We know what we can pay. We know what the position pays, and we go from there. Generally, when somebody turns in an application now, we actually tell them, "Hey, here's the pay range," so that they know going in what it is. So that way, if we tell them, "Hey, it's a $50,000 a year job," and they're expecting 75, then hey, let's stop on the first part of it. We're not gonna be able to make up that gap. But if you're expecting 55 and we're at 50, okay, now we got a little bit of room to maneuver. But I can tell you, there's not one person I remember that I have a bad taste in my mouth because they told me no, and they told me that professionally. So I've not one bad taste in my entire career of that. And I've been doing this 35 years now.
Mm-hmm. One thing, just to bounce off of that, because this actually came up in another YPC conversation that we had not long ago, is related to salary. And it's can be an awkward conversation, especially if you're new to the job force and you're not really sure when is the best time to talk about what salary ranges are. And so what is some advice that you would want to give to young professionals, like you just said, Art, as people are very transparent about their expectations and their needs for a role? What do you think is in your hiring process, when do you suggest people ask about that and how to handle it?
Yeah, usually you're going to go to 2 or 3 interviews. I generally don't want people to ask me that in the first interview, but once you get to the second interview, you need to be talking about pay, benefits, vacation, things like that to make sure the person's still interested. The first one is, is there a good fit there? Is there good chemistry? Are we, does this look like it could be a fit? Generally, what your industry is going to pay and what you're doing, especially as a young professional. You're not going to be on the higher end of things, but you should know roughly where you should be at and pay. But yeah, I would not, if I'm 5 minutes into an interview and I go, well, what does this position pay? Yeah, that's probably not going to be the best question you want to ask in the first 20 minutes of an interview. Second interview, like I said, I think that's the right time to start talking about that then.
Thanks.
And I'll also follow that up by, saying in academia, it's actually, if it's public academia, land-grant universities and things like that, it's public knowledge. There's a salary band and it'll say, like, I know on our jobs, it says like salary band H, this is what it is. And, there's a number and that's where you end up. But I also want to say, you got to look at that whole package deal too. And that is a huge thing. Like, what is what are the benefits? How much of the benefits are paid? What are the other, what's the vacation like or sick time? And those are things that, I talk to a lot of younger people and a lot of times, and they're like, well, this position only pays X amount of dollars. And I was like, yeah, but what is like the retirement match and what is how much paid time off do you get? Because those are things as you get older and, maybe you decide you want to go back to school or you're going to have a family or things like that. Those things make a big difference too. So,
yeah, and it's work-life balance. So
yes.
If they're expecting you to work 60, 70 hours, and there are some people that have zero issue with that. Okay. One of them is looking at a camera right now. So I know that's what my job entails. And I'm good with that. I have no problem with that. And I have a good work-life balance. But yeah, it is important. If you find out you get a job and then, oh, there's no PTO the first year. Oh, I don't get healthcare until 6 months later. Those are questions you should have been asking in the interview. If you're shocked by anything after you start the job, that's shame on you. Not shame on the employer.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic advice. And I chime in and agree with absolutely all of it from my hiring experience. And it's not always comfortable to ask. And it almost is never comfortable to ask. And especially when you're fresh out of maybe undergraduate, you're probably not thinking right away about 401k and retirement match and all of those things. But those are things that, you really do need to be thinking about. And if you don't know what the HR team is handing you and you have no idea what the value is, there are resources out there that can help you navigate even just the basic terminology. I know when I finished school and, you're starting to get all this paperwork and trying to figure out what it means, it's a lot all at once. But there are tools online that can help you figure out the value and what it means to you, because $5,000 in salary is not going to matter if you have no vacation time. Okay, we're going to do one more question, then we're going to wrap it up. So what are some red flags you often run into during the hiring process?
Yeah, I think I spoke of it earlier. If I'm looking at a resume, the hiring process is, this person's jumped from job to job to job. Yeah, that's a red flag for me. If you have worked 4 or 5 jobs in a 6 to 8 year period, yeah, you're job hopping a little much for me. If you have no references on your resume, so I can't call your previous employer to see how you did, if you have 0 references, and I go, why does this person not have references? They must not have references because they've made a lot of people mad wherever they've worked. So that's not a good thing. So I would say those are my 2 major red flags: is job jumping, and then no references or minimal references. Or if your reference has the same last name as you, that's not good either. Okay. Pick a friend that doesn't have the same name as you, or pick your in-law, then I won't figure it out. But if you put your mom on there or your dad on there as your reference, that's not going to go real well with me.
Oh, I agree 100%. But Art, can you really say that about last names? Like, doesn't like 50% of the horticulture industry have the same last name as you?
Well, my family, yes, for sure. That is true. But then I know they're related to me. And then, I'm never going to hire somebody related to me.
I was going to say too, for on my side of view is grammar is a really big one, because I write a lot of things, and people in my position, we write lots of stuff like social media posts or, articles, things like that. That's a big one for me. And also, I want to see some, publications and some opportunities to public speak, because those are things that, even if you're not good at it at first, it is a learned skill, but those are things that are important. So try to get those experiences if you can, if you are going into academia, for sure.
Yeah. I'll say one other thing, and people may not think this is a big deal, but body posture. I know that sounds crazy, but during an interview, if you're slouching in your chair, you're not paying attention, you're looking off into wherever. I tell my kids, know about current events, know what this industry is about. So if somebody asks you a question, you can answer those. You need to know who the president of the United States is. Even if you don't like him, it doesn't matter. You better know the president of the United States. People ask the weirdest things sometimes. I don't ask things like that, but you need to keep up with current events, and not just current events that are on TikTok or Instagram or things like that. You need to keep up with what's happening in the world and keep up with what's happening in your industry. But if you're going to go for an interview and it's going to be 30 minutes to an hour, you ought to have good body posture, give a good firm handshake when you meet somebody, make good eye contact, and be able to speak without going, well, I don't know. Yeah, if you do that, you're not going to last long in any interview. I don't care where you're at. You need to be able to present yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, be able to talk about those.
I'll also say my favorite interview question as of late is, what do you think the biggest issue in horticulture is?
Oh,
so I know there's lots of them, but like mine is labor and succession plans. So I always want to see, how have people done their homework and like looked to see what are those issues we're facing in this industry,
Absolutely. That's great. From the super technical lab bench side of things, we often find people really dive really deep into the nitty gritty of their very specific thing that they've studied for the last how many years, and they don't really come up to look at the bigger picture of how what they're doing has impacted either the industry or the science in general, the community that they work in. And it's great that people are very passionate about their very specific maybe gene in a plant that they want, but what we're really looking for is like, what do you offer? What skills do you provide? How did you take that and make it something usable? And so, being able to take your research and communicate it to a much broader audience is very, 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 very important for R&D type positions. Okay, so I want to wrap up. Thank you for joining us today. Please remember to take a look at the endowment's additional resources for young professionals at endowment.org/YPC. If you sign up and become a member, you'll be informed of all the additional upcoming webinars and events. And Karen she just did put the link in there. Thank you, Karen. And for additional career resources and industry job opportunities, visit AFE's Career Center that we talked about a little bit earlier at afecareercenter.com. And it's also in the chat. And thank you again, everyone, for participating and for attending, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.